You. Coming up.
Spines tingling. The late Dan Pelzer's handwritten log of every book he ever read is not only impressive, but, as his daughter tells us, it says a lot about who he was and what reading widely and deeply can do for anyone.
And skirting the issue. We'll give you a taste of what it sounded like when bagpipes squared off against Donald Trump in Scotland. Stay tuned. For centuries, at least, Tuktoyaktuk has been a vital land link to the Arctic Ocean. But today, that coast looks very different. Huge rocks now line the shore, with cement and other materials holding the land in place. It's the first phase of a plan to slow the waves that have been eating away at the beach, threatening homes and possibly endangering the hamlet's existence. Erwin Elias is the mayor there. We reached him in Tuktoyaktuk, Northwest Territories.
Mayor Elias, when you walk out to the coastline, describe it for me. What do you see?
Yeah, the coastline of Tuk, along with the Tuk Island, which we refer to it as, which belongs to the Inuvialuit Corporation. It's amazing to see that we have some rock armor along these areas now for protection.
So, what's been going on there? I mean, for those who don't know what Tuk has been dealing with, how has climate change been affecting Tuktoyaktuk?
So, I guess a little bit of history. I guess we've been dealing with climate change for years and years, and roughly about 8 to 10 years ago, we as a community became a little more aggressive, in dealing with the researchers of past, and also at the territorial and federal level with the governments in regards to, what's the next step. We've been researched to death, and, we know what the problems are, and we see what's happening. Now, how do we fix it? And obviously climate change, especially in the last 10 years, has been really significant and noticeable to the people of the community.
And how did that play out? I mean, less ice in the winter, stronger storms, the water was just eating away at the community? What was going on?
So any time there's any exposure of permafrost, it starts to melt, and usually once that starts happening, then you start to get the coastline or the island starts to peel. And once it peels, it falls off onto the beach, and then with the storm surges and the wave action, it takes the material out. So you're losing a lot of material, and it's just continuous until you cover the exposure, I guess.
Am I right that people have had to literally move their homes because of this?
Yes, and that's another thing. So I think, 4 or 5 years ago, we did a project here where we received some funding from the federal government, and we were able to relocate 3 houses, 4 houses actually, from Reindeer Point, from the north part of the community to Reindeer Point.
I guess given climate change, the big question is this stoppable? Or are you just buying time in a sense?
Yeah, we're dealing with Mother Nature here, so nobody really knows. And at the end of the day, we're trying to adapt with what we're facing today. And I think that, exactly when we're what we're facing today is really concerning. And, the biggest thing really is all we can do right now is, try buy the community time so that we can move on to the next stages, whether it be more shoreline protection, inner harbor protection, or how do you move the community is another thing. Relocating, it's even hard to think about when you're talking over 200 houses to move, and all the infrastructure, land exchanges, and everything you got to go through in the future. If you have to do something like this, it's going to take quite some time.
You mean move everyone, the whole thing?
Yeah. So I think about 5-6 years ago, there was a report brought back to us saying that within 30 to 50 years, Tuk will be completely covered in water. And the argument we made, when we were putting in the proposal for the shoreline protection was, we need this to buy us time so that we can try figure out, how do we move forward, and if we're going to all relocate, where do you even start? So, this is not a community issue. I think it's, a lot more than that. I think we need every department involved at every level.
Gosh. I mean, it's really happening, isn't it? I mean, it's Tuktoyaktuk is disappearing, is what you're saying.
I don't think I'd put it in those terms. It's because of, I think that it's so hard to explain at the end of the day, but not even wanting to put it in those type of terms, right? It's really hard to comprehend, and when you're born and raised in a community like this, you cling so much to your culture and your land, and it's just a really big issue we're facing here today.
It sounds like your heart is breaking.
Yeah, it's really hard to ever think about ever having to leave this community or relocating everybody, and then again facing the situation where we are today. You don't know if you're going to get the support you need. It's not a celebration to say we're all good now and it's all done. It was a celebration to show that we can do something like this. Time is not on our side, and I think time is of essence, and we need to get something going here.
Mayor Elias, congratulations on what you've been able to achieve so far, and good luck for the future.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on your show here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Erwin Elias is the mayor of Tuktoyaktuk. That's where we reached him. Muriel Chevary hadn't planned on spending much of her summer in Quebec City, but that's what the Magdalen Islands woman has had to do because it's the closest place she can get hemodialysis treatment. She's one of 3 people who have had to travel to the city to receive their treatments because of a worker shortage on the islands. The local health authority says it had increased the number of hemodialysis spots 2 years ago, but that 3 new requests filed this summer were difficult to accommodate. So Ms. Chevary has been in Quebec City since early June, uncertain of whether she'll make it back in time to return to work as a preschool teacher.
I'm very lucky because I have some hosts who are very kind and very disponible for me. So they come to pick me at the hospital, and so I'm okay out of the hospital because I'm not alone, and I have some people that I know here. But it's not the same thing for the others.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, you're a teacher, so you happen to be, off for the summer. If you had other kind of work, you'd also, I imagine, be missing work. And you know what's
Yes.
going to happen when school starts, and when you're supposed to go back to work a few weeks before school starts.
Well, yes, I'm supposed to take a contract on the island at the end of August, but we are in standby.
And just to recap, the last communication you've had with the health center, the lab or the equipment is available at this point. It's just there's no one physically working that can do this.
Presently, they have a problem of staff. Even if they come back at the end of the summer, I don't know if they will be able to open 6 days a week to take us.
Marielle Chevary has traveled from the Magdalen Islands to Quebec City to receive hemodialysis treatments. She was speaking with the CBC's Julia Page. In this day and age, it's not uncommon to keep a detailed record of the books you read. But if you've got big goals for your Goodreads account, you'll find you have stiff competition in Dan Pelzer. In 1962, Mr. Pelzer started a handwritten list, keeping track of every single book he finished. In the years that followed, he would add a whopping 3,599 titles to that list. Mr. Pelzer died earlier this month. He was 92 years old. He added his last book, David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, to the list in 2023. Now his children have posted his list to a website, preserving a public record of their father's love of reading. Marcy Pelzer is Dan Pelzer's daughter. We reached her in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Marcy, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
This has been going on for 60 years, but I take it you didn't know about this until about 20 years ago when you found out he'd been keeping this list. Did that feel in character for him when you learned that? Did you go like, oh yeah, this makes sense?
I would say yes. And I think the thing about the list is, people have been making comments like, oh, it's not a competition of how many books you read. And what they don't realize that it was just a list of the books he read that he kept personally so he could remember and think about them. It wasn't for anybody else, and most people didn't know he had it.
As a keeper of lists myself, I respect that. It's like it's for your own fun, So he began this when? 1962. What do you know about how it all got started?
Well, I'm learning more about that. What I've been hearing from New York Times commenters is there was a Peace Corps program called the Peace Corps Book Locker, and they made sure that all the Peace Corps sites had these libraries of books. So we just found that so charming. It's as if it was the first free little library.
Do you know what made him start jotting them all down?
I think he probably, knowing him, saw that there were a number of books and thought he could get through them all as kind of a personal challenge. I could see him doing that.
What did reading do for him? Like why was it such a constant in his life, do you think?
He was a very internally focused person. He was spiritual. He liked to meditate. And, he was a deep thinker. So that's how he passed the time, probably too much time. We know he was at sometimes reading at work, but he also read on the bus and everywhere he went. He always had a book open, book in his hand, and it stimulated great conversations with all kinds of people. If you told him about a book and recommended it, he would always read it.
Like when you'd go to see him, would he, like, you walk into the house and there he is with his nose in a book?
Absolutely. He set goals for reading 100 pages a day, and he'd tell you, I just have to read this many more pages before I go to bed. And, sometimes he would talk about books being a slog. Other times he'd talk about loving them. The routine became in later years that I'd ask him what's been good lately, and he'd pull out the list and, look through the last few books he'd read and tell you the ones he really liked.
So I was looking at the list, right? Like number 10 is Moby Dick. Right? It's like, really, you're going deep right off the bat. But he's got, I saw Winston Churchill and Stephen King, right? Like Schindler's List, John Irving, Margaret Atwood, books about books, right?
Absolutely.
He was hardcore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did he have a favorite like author genre? Like what did he love?
He loved a real page turner. So like if I'm sure if you flipped through like I did, you saw John Grisham all through the years up till the last 10 books that he read. He loved Stephen King, but he also loved Dolores Kearns Goodwin and lots of Christian writers that I don't know as well, religion writers. He just loved a little bit of everything.
Have you got favorites on the list that you read because he did?
More so the ones that are special, they're ones that he read because I read them. Second to the last book is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, a book that I loved, and it made me happy to see that was one of the last books he read.
It seems to me that, I don't know, is it fair to say books kept his mind open? I take it he read about the climate crisis at a certain point, and as a result became vegan. Is that right?
Yeah, at about 90 years old. And this has also been a good reflection about the things that become harder as you're aging. I think it was a great comfort to him to go stay with my mom, who was in a nursing home the last 3 years, spend some time with her, and then go home to his empty apartment and read.
My librarian friends would be pleased to hear that most of these books were from the local library in Columbus, a place that he was very faithful to, which, as I understand it, is now digitizing his list. Did he know everybody there? Well, like, what kind of relationship did he have with his local branch?
Oh, absolutely. They all knew him over the years. But I would just want to say the really special thing about what the library is doing. His list, when we threw it up online, it's nostalgic, it's yellowing, it's handwritten, it's chronological, and you can look at it and think about what a man was doing at that point in his life. But what the library is doing, it's searchable. You can see the book covers. There are little summaries of the books, and I would really direct people to look at that too.
The world is getting to both enjoy and appreciate it. What does that mean to you and the rest of your family that this is happening now?
Oh, it means the world to us. And, what's really great also is the dialogue people are having with us about the list. Somebody emailed me yesterday and the comment was, I noticed he read a lot of history in 1968. I wonder why. And of course, I flipped open and started thinking about what was going on in the world and the books he was reading, and it was such a great experience. Or people who point out that in 1998 and 1999, between diet books and Suze Orman, he was reading the Modern Library's top 100 novels. Titles like I, Claudius, and Grapes of Wrath, and yes, his least favorite, Ulysses.
If your dad was here now, and he knew that the whole world was looking at his list and getting something out of it, how do you think he'd feel?
I think he'd love to see the library getting the attention, and he's so grateful to what public institutions like libraries have done for the community. If it's getting kids to read, he'd be thrilled. And then, he was very interested in a peaceful world and those kinds of dialogue that make us more tolerant of one another. That would have been important to him too. So he would have loved it all.
3,599 books. My goodness.
It's an amazing legacy.
Isn't it? Thank you so much, Marcy.
Thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Marcy Pelzer is the daughter of the late Dan Pelzer. We reached her in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You don't get very far in hockey without being really, really good at skating. And for the last 11 years, David Pelletier has helped the Edmonton Oilers be just that, as the team's skating coach. But now he's going to try his hand at all the other stuff you need to be really good at in a hockey game as an assistant coach for the NHL's Dallas Stars. Pelletier is probably still best known for his winning gold in pairs figure skating with his partner Jamie Salé at the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. CBC's Sarah-Kate Dallaire spoke to Coach Pelletier about why he's taking up this new job.
After my I don't like to use the word career, but my chapter as a figure skater, you go on to this professional circuit, and then one day you just had enough. And I had enough. I started coaching a little bit of figure skating just to stay busy. But I realized quickly I didn't have the fire in me anymore. I think that I went around that circle a few times, and I remember there's a dad at the rink that asked me if I could help with his son. With his skating. He was playing hockey, and then that led to working with his team. That led to working with other teams, and then all of a sudden I received a call from the Edmonton Oilers asking me if I wanted to work with their prospects in the summer, and that was 11 years ago. I'm quite proud of the longevity I had with the team, and my role kind of not changed but evolved, where responsibilities and tasks were added to my fundamental roles of player development. And now you look at the roles I will have with the Stars, it's sensibly, on a daily, the same job. You just got to help the players be the best they can and take away all the worries and distraction.
How did the players react when they learned that an outsider from the hockey world, essentially someone with an impressive career but not familiar as much with hockey, would come in and teach him how to skate or be there as their coach, their skating coach?
If you grew up in the Gaspé area and you're doing figure skating in the 80s in a town of 2,000 people, you can only imagine, you kind of grow up with, you don't have a choice. You have to build this layer of protection because you get called names that we don't thankfully use anymore. You kind of grew up thinking what you're doing is not respected until you decide to respect it yourself, and then you own it. And going into hockey, I have to say, first and foremost, you're going in with that, your walls up and a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, thinking, is this going to be, well, I'm a figure skater. I got made fun all my life. This is the NHL. But I have to say, truly, 100%, not one player has never made me feel like I was less than them because I was a figure skater.
That was David Pelletier talking to CBC's Sarah-Kate Dallaire about his new assistant coaching gig with the Dallas Stars. Have you ever heard the old joke, what's the difference between bagpipes and an onion? The answer is, no one cries when you cut up bagpipes. That punchline is just one sign that the sound of bagpipes are not universally beloved, though they certainly do have their fans. But equally divisive may be the sound of Donald Trump speaking to reporters. It's music to the ears of some, others not so much. And so it was met with considerable glee all around when those two sounds met. The president paused to address reporters during a photo op with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer at his golf club in Scotland this week, all while an enthusiastic piper nearby continued to play at full tilt. And this, my friends, is our sound of the day.
Nice trade deal yesterday.
How are you feeling about it?
Great. Biggest one ever made.
What do you hope to accomplish today?
I would be nice to see you, brother.
That was our sound of the day from the Turnberry Golf Course in Scotland earlier this week. Bagpipes versus Donald Trump, a battle no one wins. Now here's 2 hours traffic with Noisemaker. That brings us to the end of As It Happens on Tuesday, July 29th.
As It Happens, we'll be back tomorrow. I'm Paul Hunter. Enjoy your evening.
I'm Talia Schlanger. Good night.
This is CBC Radio 1, 89.5 FM in Happy Valley, Goose Bay.
I think it's fair to consider Washington Black a modern Canadian classic. That book came out in 2018. Essie Adugyan won the Giller Prize for it. It's an epic tale, and now it's a TV show. We're going to get into the Washington Black adaptation and also why such a major Canadian novel was produced by Americans. I'm Alamin Abdul-Mahmoud. This is Commotion. Elle Jones is here. Floyd Kane is here. Welcome back to Commotion, both of you.
Hi.
Hi, nice to have you here. Listen, Washington Black is a big historical drama. Wash is the main character of the show. He starts off as a slave in Barbados. He has this daring escape, and then adventures await. Let's just listen to a bit of the trailer of Washington Black.
Welcome to Halifax. Last stop on the Underground Railroad. Everybody step off with their own story. Boy, do I got one for you. A story about a young man and the boy he used to be.
Tell me your name. George Washington Black.
I gotta say, something about listening to Sterling K. Brown saying, "Welcome to Halifax." I'm like, I'm not sure I'm buying that particular way of saying "Welcome to Halifax," but we're gonna get to that in a moment. Floyd, I want to start off by telling us that, this trailer sets up this epic quest. You said that Washington Black reminds you of Oliver Twist. Tell me a bit more about the tone of the show.
Yeah, it felt like it had that whimsical, it was like a whimsical coming of age story, but it was mixed with this sort of like very serious, grounded subject matter. Like I was thinking about it like Oliver Twist, Les Mis on some level, Slumdog Millionaire. But of course the difference in this case is that it's a story of a young black kid, which, that was the thing that I found very different and refreshing about it.
Yeah, I mean, in this particular case, you meet Washington Black, and he's falling in love, and he's trying to sort of do all kinds of scientific experiments, and there's something in his past, and then that thing that is in his past is sort of slowly revealed. The show is produced by Sterling K. Brown, obviously a huge Hollywood actor, Emmy winner, Oscar nominated. People maybe know him from This Is Us or Paradise. When you watch the show, you could tell any story. I just want you to hear why he chose Washington Black.
There's one image in particular of this young black boy in the Arctic that I was like, oh, I've never seen a little black boy in the Arctic. I just want to see that picture on screen. That really sort of screamed to me. But it's also the idea of taking something that is probably one of the most oppressive institutions in the history of the world with regards to the transatlantic slave trade and flipping it. Showing somebody who existed within that timeline but refused to have his circumstances define who he is as an individual. The power of his imagination was able to transcend that.
So that's Sterling K. Brown on the BAFTA's YouTube channel. Elle, do you agree with Sterling there? Like, does this story feel different from the narratives of slavery that we've seen in the past?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Essie is really playing with in this book is that question. So the Age of High Adventure story is a Victorian narrative, and she's playing with that steampunk, but that was also the height of empire and slave trade. So she asks us this question: what if the adventurer was black? But if the adventurer is black, and black people don't usually get adventure stories, right? But you can't ignore slavery then. So we would have to be moving from slavery to freedom, but then that's also complicated. So what if freedom isn't freedom? What if we move in different directions? So I think one of the things that's really beautiful in this is what it means for black people to travel. We know we actually have been around the globe. We have been in the Arctic. We have been, to Morocco, all these places, but we're often only seen in one place. We're seen as a static people. But at the same time, she's asking us that question of, what does a journey to freedom look like? And can it be individual, or does it have to be collective if you're a black person? And are you truly free? So we have those really beautiful questions from the book that I think are also very much picked up in the series as well.
Yeah, Essie Adugyan famously just asks us the biggest possible questions for us to consider. And I love her. I love her for that. Floyd, when you think about this story, do you feel like, Washington Black is trying to tell a different kind of narrative? Do you agree with Sterling's characterization there?
I think they're trying to tell a different narrative, for sure. As I said, I've never seen, it's nice to see a young black kid at the center of this kind of adventure story, right? I don't, I'll use the word swashbuckling kind of story. It's great to see that. I think it's just, for me, I appreciated the images that he's talking about, which are in the second half of the show. I really appreciated those images. But there are other things about it that, they are not I would just say, I think that some of the portrayals, maybe they're a bit simplified, but, I think in terms of the show itself, I feel like it's a massive win.
Okay, I'm interested in that contrast, the idea of some portrayals are simplified, but then the show as exists is a massive win, because the context here is it's also a story that is set in Halifax, or a lot of it is set in Halifax. You are both Nova Scotians. This series is largely shot in Nova Scotia, Halifax, Peggy's Cove, Lunenburg. Elle, as a professor, what grade would you give the show in terms of its depiction of African Nova Scotian history?
Well, what I do like is that Halifax is portrayed as at the center of the world. For example, Emancipation, Bob Marley's song was written on a speech written in Halifax, delivered in Nova Scotia. So we often don't think of ourselves as central to global blackness, and that is a beautiful thing. At the same time, as I think Floyd's about to get to as well, there's some historical difficulties, perhaps starting with the idea that we were the last stop on the Underground Railroad. I think that's a pretty loose interpretation of how black people actually came to Halifax, most of which was not through the Underground Railroad.
Those are the first words you hear in the show.
Yeah.
You hear Sterling K. Brown say that. Yes.
So I think it's simplified for an American audience, which is a shame, because the history of black journey into Halifax is actually a very wide-ranging and interesting one. So I think, and then of course, I know Floyd is going to say this, so I don't want to steal his thunder, but the accents are very American. So, in a way, it would be nice to actually see what is African Nova Scotia, the specific accents, the specific way of being that is unique to the nation that is Nova Scotia. And that, I think, because they obviously want to universalize it and perhaps sell it into an American market, they want to kind of use the frame of, oh, it's Canada, this place of freedom, but not actually give us the substantiveness that is Black Canada. So we end up, which, by the way, when we were talking about 40 Acres, we kind of see the same thing, that often we have these productions.
40 Acres is the movie that we talked about a few weeks ago. Yeah.
That will be set in Canada, but then really want to vibe American, just so it doesn't seem too Canadian. I think we see that here as well.
Floyd, let us, Elle didn't want to steal your thunder, so let us hand you your thunder. Do you think the show would feel different if a Canadian had made it? Would there be a different kind of sensitivity there?
Here's the thing. I think we would look, for me, and I feel like what's interesting is that I haven't read the book, but one of the things that I felt watching the film, the TV show, is that there was this whole I don't know, he felt all of these things happened to him as a child, and he didn't feel like it didn't always feel like he was living in those, like that those things were with him.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like if Canadians would have made this, there probably would have been a bit more of that heaviness with him. But also, I mean, I have to say, like, as a Nova Scotian and as a Canadian, I would have loved to have seen more of the geography of where those Black communities were actually settled. Like, there's some amazing photography in this limited series, like just incredible. Like,
it's shot beautifully. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's like it. In some cases, I'm like, wow, this would have played great in a movie theater. But I did kind of feel like when the Black characters were like on screen and in Community, I just would have loved to have actually been in one of those communities depicting what life was like in those communities at that time. Because I feel like that it is very hard to get our history, Canadian history, on camera. Having an opportunity to tell Black Canadian history, I mean, it's like 5 times as hard.
I take your point that like sort of rendering the granular details of those communities actually really matters, and I think like if Canadian storytellers were maybe tasked with doing this, they would have paid a bit more attention to that. In the pre-interview for this conversation, you know, one of the questions that you were asked is like, what is owed to a community if outsiders come in and try to tell their stories? Let me ask you that question. Like, what do you think is the answer to that? What do you owe to those communities?
That was actually an issue with this production. So initially they were planning on filming in Shelburne, and the community rightly said, well, are we going to be doing the catering? Do we have the skills to be crew? You know, are you going to come in and hire us? Or is this another time where our story is going to be extracted and used, but then we don't actually benefit from it? So everybody gets to live this story of Black freedom except the people whose ancestors are rooted there, right? And I think that's a real question. So especially I think as more Black stories are being told, Nova Scotia is such a place rich in history. I mean, we could talk about the story of Richard Preston, which is a story analogous to what's happening here, but real life, where he escaped slavery in Virginia, finds his mother in Nova Scotia, travels to the UK. You know, we have the story of the ships going back to Sierra Leone and the fight to get that. We have so much beautiful history. But if you come and tell those stories, that's not a dead history in Nova Scotia. Those literal descendants are there. So how does telling that story benefit us? How does it actually enrich our culture? And will those storytellers have the opportunity to be on film themselves, to be writing themselves, to be publishing and filming? Or do we always sort of just the background actors that come in for a week, but then somebody else runs with it? And I think that's a real question.
It's a really important point to focus on, that idea of it not being a dead history. Floyd, I want to ask you, because like this show is made mostly in Nova Scotia. Clearly, the talent is here, right? Like, the idea that like it's Sterling K. Brown, is Disney needed to tell the story? Why is it that they are telling the story and not a Canadian broadcaster, say?
I think it's complicated. I think I think the obvious reason is money.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, you know, you simply cannot, like, Canadians simply cannot compete with the amount of money that a U.S. studio would pay to option a book like this, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, frankly, like, there's no competition. I mean, the Americans see books when they're in the galley form, and then they're like, you know, buying them before they're even published. So that's one of the issues. Also, it's like, you know, this show probably costs like, what, $10 million an episode. It's 8 episodes, so probably around $80 million US. I mean, for us in Canada, like, getting $20 million to do this is like that's a huge budget.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that money is a huge issue. But also, like, I think part of it is it's about value, right? Like, I mean, just speaking about like Black Canadian history, I don't know how much we value it, right? Like, I think it, once again, it's like, and part of it is not so much, and it's not just about, when I say we, I'm not just talking about Canada and Canadian broadcasters and producers. I'm talking about internationally. Like, how do you, like, you know, because the way that we make shows, it's not like, you know, the CBC comes in and they finance the whole thing 100%. you got to go out to the world when you're trying to make a big epic show, territory by territory, and raise that money. And I mean, I would probably say there's a lot of shows that have died on that trail, right? Because we just don't have the money, and the market is just like, you know, they don't value us properly.
I just want to acknowledge, first of all, that, like, yeah, I work at one of those institutions. I work at the CBC. Like, we posed this question to the CBC by saying, like, hey, what happened in terms of the rights for Washington Black? And the spokesperson for CBC, Chuck Thompson, this is a statement that he gave us. He said, we looked into the rights for Washington Black, but were told they were unavailable. We asked what that meant, and he told us, not sure about those details. We think the rights had already been sold by the time we started looking into it, but we just don't know, as it all happened a few years ago. Elle, maybe last word to you, maybe with a minute left here. What do you make of what Floyd was saying there? This idea that we don't value that history enough.
Yeah, I think we also don't value current Black life. You know, that I think there's often an issue of like, you guys got this 6 years ago. You know, you got Book of Negroes 10 years ago. So that's it. Be happy. You know what I mean? And that there's always still one story that's told about Black people, which is exactly what SC was playing with. Like, what do you do with that one story? What about all the brilliant Black minds that have been lost in slavery and now? How many brilliant Black storytellers like Washington Black have not been given their chance to be able to flourish, right? That's actually at the heart of the book too. What is Black brilliance? And so I think we need to not just take Black stories, but think about Black people in those communities still live by dumps, are still shot by the police, are still living in poverty. And what we actually need to do is change those conditions in contemporary Canada so that Black people actually are allowed to flourish. And I think that's the message I, in a lot of ways, take away from this story. It can't just be a magical adventure. We have to think about Black freedom now.
I appreciate both of your time and your insight. Thank you so much for being on the show today. You guys are great. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You bet. Talk to you soon. Floyd Kane is a longtime producer whose work includes the TV show Digstown. He was also an executive producer on the film Village Keeper. Elle Jones is a poet and assistant professor in the Department of Politics at Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax. And Washington Black is right now on Disney+. I'm Alamin Abdul-Mahmoud, and this is Commotion. Last month, Canadian hip-hop lost one of its longest-running programs on community radio. It's called The Master Plan Show, and it ran for 35 years. It was a weekly outlet for hip-hop fans. Every Saturday, that show introduced listeners to the newest music in hip-hop, but also it paid special attention to hip-hop made in Toronto and hip-hop made in Canada. And then last month, we got the news that the show had been canceled. Dalton Higgins has been following the story. He's with us right now. Dalton, welcome back to the show, friend.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. Nice to see you. Listen, Toronto has this rich history of hip-hop programming on community radio stations, starting, of course, with Ron Nelson on CKLN 88.1. Where does the Master Plan Show fit into this timeline?
Yeah, well, I mean, there have been a lot of, hip-hop focused radio shows on Toronto campus community radio over the last, 4 decades. But, the Master Plan Show was not just another sort of garden variety rap radio show. I mean, we're talking about, it was Canada's longest running hip hop radio show. And, it was more viewed as an institution more than anything. When you look at the roster, when you look at the lineup, the host, the DJs, and you consider the sheer amount of Canadian hip hop pioneers that came out of this show, it almost reads like a who's who of Toronto hip hop history, right? Like when you look at, one of the show's co-hosts and co-founders, John Bronsky, I mean, he was the guy that executive produced Canada's first hip hop LP. Called the Cold Front compilation, right? You look at the other co-host, right? Motion. Now, Motion was one of Toronto's pioneering female rappers, right? She recorded with this group called UBAD, Us Blacks Are Dope. And then you go right back to the DJs now, they had this DJ Power. He was one of the early celebrated turntablists. And then the other DJ, DTS, goes all the way back to the sound system era, right? So if you're a serious hip hop head in Toronto, you are tuning in every Saturday night, 89.5 CIUT 89.5 to get your hip hop fix, Yeah.
I just want people to get a taste of what it was like to listen to the Master Plan Show. Let's just here's a bit of what it sounded like in the 90s.
89.5 CIUT, the Master Plan Show. We're the super hip hop station on your Saturday night. Check your FM dial. We here every Saturday. MC Motion.
Yes, this is the Motion. Want to make sure that everybody is passing the word online that the Master Plan Show is in full effect. We started off the hour 8.
That's who you were just talking about. That's the Master Plan Show. That's the co-host, Motion, on the mic. Dalton, there was like an intergenerational element to the Master Plan Show, and also Fantastic Voyage, of course, that is worth highlighting. Do you want to talk about the ways that sort of like the baton was passed, and you experienced that baton being passed as you listened to the show?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think one of the things that stood out about the show is that there was this sort of well thought out and intentional sort of like succession planning, right?
Right.
Which you honestly don't see happening enough in radio, in my opinion, where oftentimes you'll see radio hosts like sticking around far too long rather than opening up their shows to provide like opportunities for newer, fresher voices. But the Master Plan show did things differently. They were okay with, essentially passing the torch to a newer generation of voices. So the show would always switch things up over the years. They would add in different co-hosts and just add different energies to the mix, right?
Yeah.
So over the years, you'd hear different co-hosts. Like, there was this personality called Jay Wise. He was a well-regarded poet and broadcaster in the community. He was co-hosting at one point in time or another. And then further down the line, you'd get to hear all of these great, newer, fresher, younger, emerging DJ talents like Matthew Romeo or DJ Romeo. So I think that's one of their legacies. They sort of understood this idea of intergenerational legacy, passing the torch.
So I want to talk about the cancellation now. I want to play you a clip of Philip Vellino, who's a.k.a. DJ PV. He's the host and producer of the show, and he's explaining his side of what happened.
I got an email saying that we were to be canceled for profanity and abusive language from the music I was playing, as well as some of the artists that I had on the airwaves. I ran a listener discretion advised thinking it would cover us. I fought it through the board. And unfortunately, I'm kind of left with a bit more questions and no answers.
So that's DJ PV's side of the story. We reached out to CIUT for comment, and here's what we got from Ken Stower, the station manager and program director. In a statement, he basically corroborated the things that that Philip just said, but added that the station did an audit of the program and found that there were numerous instances of profanity and misogyny that went to air on multiple episodes. He told us that the host was dismissed, then provided the opportunity to reapply and go through some training, but he says Philip declined that offer. He says CIUT is committed to hip-hop culture and plans to introduce a new program in the future. When you get that reaction, when you see all of that, Dalton, what's your reaction?
My reaction is, campus community radio station volunteers rarely get dismissed like this, to my knowledge. So the saying, where there's smoke, there's always fire. I think that's the case here. So I believe that there's a lot more to it than we're hearing publicly. Because again, for a radio station to dismiss a volunteer radio broadcast, you barely, that just doesn't happen. And also too, it doesn't happen without the broadcaster sort of getting issued maybe a couple warnings. Maybe they talk to the programmer about the issues tied to profanity. Maybe you get a written warning. So we're not getting any information about what kind of process transpired behind the scenes, right? That's what I would say to that.
So just in terms of general reactions, Randy Reed is the CEO and general manager of Vibe 105.5, another community radio station in Toronto. He's got a long track record of hip-hop programming. Here's what he had to say about the cancellation.
Even though the incident with the Master Plan show is unfortunate, I guess for me, I would more so mark this as a cautionary tale for those of us in the hip-hop community who care about the legacy and even the future state of the culture in media as a whole. The reality is you can't plant a legacy seed and only water it once every other year and expect quality results. What we're witnessing with the Master Plan show is a little result of that. And even though there are new platforms and new technologies to explore, the seed for new talent and content development is within the scope of community-led media. So I would encourage us all to put our best foot behind that.
You can't plant a legacy seed and only water it every other year. What's your reaction to that, Dalton?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think, people in the hip hop community would have noticed that the host of the new incarnation of Master Plan show, which is called Generation Next, that's the show that got canceled. Yeah. And I think the host, Philip, I think he's being pretty transparent and sort of does admit to being a bit sloppy in some areas. When it comes to giving a bit of a platform to, profanity being aired on the airwaves. Yeah. So what I would say to what Randy said, it is a very important point. I think that given that, Black music is so heavily scrutinized and it mostly always feels like it's under attack, and it very clearly doesn't get the support that other music forms get in Toronto. So I think, you can't give the station any opportunity, CIUT in this case, any opportunity to find a loophole to get rid of you, right? So I think, where it comes to Phil Vellino and the, Generation X, like, with great power comes great responsibility, right? This show comes out of the community. The original co-hosts and DJs, they come out of a strong community-centered sort of ethics and morals, right? So we have to be very careful there, very careful. Yeah.
A lot of us have been shaped deeply by community radio. I come from community radio. Shout out CKVI and CFRC. I'm in Kingston, Ontario, but I think it's with maybe like 30 seconds left here. I would like to talk about the place of community radio for hip hop in general. What do you make of where that is right now? Because you've been a publicist for hip hop for a long time. You've been in hip hop for a long time. What do you think about community radio and the role that it occupies? Where is it right now?
Yeah. I mean, the questions I would ask are, are hip hop community members relying on community radio to get their fix like they once did years ago? I don't know. That's open to debate, but there is great hip hop programming happening in the city on campus community radio, Vibe 105 FM up at York. And maybe that's not even the point, right? The point here is that these legacy time slots that have been handed down, Master Plan show to Generation X, Generation Next show rather, they need to be protected. They need to be respected because, the struggle continues,
100%. I really appreciate your time, Dalton. I really appreciate your insights and also like your deep, lengthy history of this. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. Dalton Higgins is a publicist and culture critic based in Toronto.
Yo, all sounds must stand. Just make nobody can test. As you come with a finesse. Come with it, yeah. Got it, I love the side. My. Get so fresh with the skin right. Open side, mash up outside like. All the way sounds must die. Yo, you know my flavor greater than a you or a you. Who can match flows besides me? Comparing max. My style is catchy, cause when you hear it, you love it, but I'm dissing. Is it to you that I'm a foreign? If not, then it's you, cause it's you who I'm reciting 2, 3, 4 encores or job they draw. Now you identified, verbs amplified. Check my beats around, they go inside. Come inside my mind and leave Freddy's victim. Sticking them is quicker than evicting them. Plus I like licking the sternum. Her or him is irrelevant, it's still you, so feel me. And when we're nice, you party from the early crack of dawn until your ears finally go D-E-A-F. Yes, who's reciting? Planning to kill your squad quicker than you think you could blink. Think fast or else will be the new material for Sherlyn. Shaolin couldn't help defeat what I be bringing. Yeah. Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah. Got it out in the way it's like so. Got it out of his eyes. My. Guess I'm fresh to the asking why. Open side, mash up outside like. All the way sounds must die. Why? Why do you walk MCs try? Try to this I like God and I don't know that them so die. Yo, mother, know who's the best if it ain't that Cardinal. It ain't nobody else. Seeping through the cracks, making stacks for nothing. Looking fresh with $5 on the side, 50 in the sock for frontin'. Pearly white style for camouflage with.
From 1996, that's a bit of Cardinal Official with Naughty Dread. Some of Cardinal's earliest interviews were on the Toronto CIUT radio show, The Master Plan Show. Last week, news broke that the show had been canceled. That is it for the show today. My name is Alamin Abdul Mahmoud. Hey, we'll see you tomorrow.
I crave swine, so whosoever want test, check it out. Straight up, we roll as a unit. Unified forces, Richie use law apply. See it in my eyes. I'm via mental more than physical destruction. Nothing supplies to rhyme and check my verse for construction. Got it all open side, right. Guess I'm fresh to be asking why. Open side, mash up outside like.
This is CBC Radio 1, 89.5 FM in Happy Valley, Goose Bay.
Rubik's, Jigsaw, Wordle? Hardly. Get ready, Canada. It's time for another edition of That's Puzzling. Host Pia Chattopadhyay competes against one familiar voice and one clever listener in a battle of brain games devised by puzzle master Peter Brown. That's Puzzling all summer long. Friday afternoon at 1:30 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
What is it like to spend your whole childhood fleeing danger? What can your divorced parents teach you about marriage? And what does vision loss sound like? You can explore all of these real human experiences on the Personally podcast feed. It's a collection of true stories that explore what it means to be human. There are 6 incredible seasons to dive into, with more on the way. Get lost in someone else's life with CBC's Personally. Available now on CBC Listen and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next, followed by Ideas with Nala Ayed.
An experimental artist in an industrial job, a female welder in a workforce of men. Author Hilary Peach talks about the joys and contradictions of being an outsider inside the trades, coming up on Ideas.
From CBC News, The World This Hour, I'm Mike Miles. CBC News has learned the federal government is weighing whether to recognize Palestinian statehood and whether there will be conditions. That, according to a government source, it follows this from the UK's Prime Minister.
The UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September.
Keir Starmer says the UK would hold off on that decision if Israel ends the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza. That includes reaching a ceasefire and a firm commitment to a long-term peace process. Parts of Canada are in the grip of a heat wave. Most of southern Ontario is under a heat warning, while parts of British Columbia's interior are expected to reach highs of 37. Ali Chiasson reports.
This summer's hot and humid weather has been hard to escape.
In the city, it's extremely hot, kind of oven-like.
Sending some to cool off in public pools or head to the lakefront or stay indoors and seek air conditioning. Others...
I'm not complaining. We got 2 months of this.
It has been a hot 2 months. Toronto has spent more than half of the summer under heat warnings. Climatologist Dave Phillips says it's the same story from Western to Eastern Canada and everywhere in between.
Out in the prairies, they had them actually in May, and they've had them also in July. So nobody is feeling that they have been cheated.
Phillips says the heat Canada is experiencing now can be linked to the warm air coming up from the United States, where millions are under heat warnings, with 31 states, from New York to Texas, being told to stay indoors.
Our models are showing for August and September and October, we see warmer than normal.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Ottawa's National Art Centre is cutting ties with a controversial Chinese performance group. Shen Yun is known for its elaborate dance productions and its association with the Chinese sect Falun Gong. The center is alleging Shen Yun breached contracts and mistreated audience members with disabilities. Rafi Bujakanyan has more.
For nearly 2 decades, the international Shen Yun Group has performed at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa. But the Federal Crown Corporation won't have them back next year. CBC News has learned NAC staff mulled the decision for months in emails obtained by an access to information request. Among other allegations, they cited Shen Yun removing audience members with disabilities at last April's performance.
We have been mystified.
Grace Wallensack is with the Falun Dafa Association of Canada. The religious group is banned in China and closely affiliated with Shen Yun. Wallensack says the NAC removed noisy audience members and she refunded them. She says Beijing has been targeting Shen Yun. Some emails show the Chinese embassy here recently tried inviting NAC management over for receptions. The NAC confirms Shen Yun has no events booked next year and says its decisions are made independently. Rafi Bujakanyan, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Toronto Blue Jays have one of the best records in baseball right now, and that has many fans hoping the front office was ready to go all in with the Major League Baseball trade deadline just days away. Greg Ross explains.
With one of the best records in baseball, many believe the Blue Jays have become legitimate World Series contenders.
If there's an opportunity where you think that this team is good enough to win a championship, you have to take that.
Aaron Rose is a reporter for SI.com who covers the Blue Jays. He says the Jays front office should be willing to sacrifice the future to win now, which could mean trading away some of the team's top prospects currently playing in the minor leagues before the MLB trade deadline.
This farm system has not been good in recent years, but is finally starting to get better, and that gives you assets to go out and make a trade.
Rose says he believes the area the Jays should try to improve is their relief pitching. The question is, do Blue Jays GM Ross Atkins and President Mark Shapiro agree? The MLB trade deadline is Thursday at 6 p.m. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is your World This Hour. Remember, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. We update every hour, 7 days a week. For CBC News, I'm Mike Miles.
I'm Heather Gillis with a look at your weather forecast. Tonight for St. John's and the Avalon, mainly to partly cloudy with some fog, a low of 14. For the Bonavista Peninsula, the Burin and Conagra Peninsulas and Central, partly cloudy with a chance of showers or drizzle. The southwest coast will get 5 millimeters tonight, 5 to 15 for the west coast, and 15 to 30 millimeters for the northern peninsula. Temperatures between 14 to 16 degrees, except the northern peninsula. It will be 10 degrees. Tomorrow, Regatta Day in St. John's, some sun and cloud.
Hillary Peach was a young person passionate about words, but she knew that poetry wasn't going to pay the bills. For 20 years, she worked as a welder, becoming part of the Boilermakers Union. These days, she's a boiler inspector and a published author of several books, because she never gave up on writing. It's a combination of careers that some people find surprising, but not Hillary.
I'm a strong believer that you can have a dual career path, and lots of people in the trades do. There are lots of artists who take up trades.
Welcome to Ideas. I'm Nala Ayed.
It became kind of a dual thing, but I've always been writing. I was very content toiling in obscurity for 35 years. So this book's got a little bit of attention, which is also very nice and kind of unnerving.
That book that Hillary Peach is talking about, it's a memoir, one that poetically fuses together the different parts of her working life. It's called Thick Skin, Field Notes from a Sister in the Brotherhood. It follows her life as a traveling welder, from shipyards to tar sands, pulp mills to power stations, across Canada and in the U.S. In March of 2024, she traveled to Waterloo, Ontario, to accept a literary prize for the book.
Congratulations to Hillary Peach on being named the 2023 winner of the Edna Stabler Award for Creative Nonfiction.
Wilfrid Laurier University President Deborah McClatchy.
Her deep dive into the culture of Boilermaking through her lens as one of the only women in the trade brings a world most of us would otherwise never experience. She spent 2 decades as a traveling Boilermaker, often the only woman on a job site. Through her wit and keen sense of observation, she tackles the tough and enduring topic of sexism in the trades and brings us all along on the journey into the world of industrial construction.
Hillary Peach took to the stage at Laurier University to give a public talk. She explores why the trades remain a work culture so identified with men, closed off to women and other so-called outsiders. Except that outsiders like Hillary Peach do enter the trades, and some even persevere. Their presence opens the eyes of male colleagues and opens the door for others. The question is, how to keep them there? Her talk is interspersed with readings, stories from her memoir, but she begins with a vintage song lyric from the Rolling Stones.
She was common, flirty, she looked about 30. I would have run away, but I was on my own. She told me later, she's a machine operator. She said she liked the way I held the microphone. The first time that I listened closely to that song was in 1988 when I was 20, working as a deckhand on a fishing boat off the northeast coast of Vancouver Island. The boat was a 36-foot West Coast combination, and we were gill netting salmon. When we fished at night after the net was set, there wasn't a whole lot to do during the wheel shift except keep an eye on it and listen to music to stay awake. There were 2 shoe boxes of cassette tapes in the galley, their cases missing, played so often the labels were worn off. I thought it was odd, Keith Richards and Mick Jagger writing about a 30-year-old female machine operator way back in 1965. I always wondered if it was a true story, and also what kind of machine it was. some kind of a press, a machine in a factory. I imagined an excavator on a road building crew moving huge buckets of sand, and the image of that rinsed out blonde at the controls stuck in my consciousness like a little kernel of possibility. 8 years, an arts degree, and a number of different jobs later, I found myself looking for a career that would sustain me, something that would pay the bills. I enrolled in a trades discovery program, sampling a week of carpentry, another of electrical, some plumbing and sheet metal, and when it was over, I signed up for my first year of welding school. On day one, we gathered in the classroom off the side of the machine shop at the technical college. We were a cohort of 14, of whom I can remember the following: a nice guy called Richard, 2 Filipino guys, one guy who was a little older than the rest of us, one huge silent guy, one rambunctious mouthy guy, and the others who were just a blur of macho crowd noises about whom I remember nothing. I was the only woman, carefully dressed in jeans and a checked shirt, my hair in 2 neat braids. At the end of the introductory class, the instructor called me over. He was a big man in his 60s, perched on a metal stool at a tall teaching desk. I had heard that he had been a professional wrestler. He had been teaching for a long time and was looking towards his retirement. "You don't want to do this," he said. "I don't?" "No, you don't." He adopted an appropriately serious expression, so I would heed his message. "Why not?" I asked. "Trust me," he said, "you don't want to be a welder." He closed his plastic binder and stood up, the conversation over. I nodded my understanding. "And how do you know what I want?" He was pushing the binder into a kind of leather satchel and looked up, stern, like I was supposed to take it on his authority. "Look," he said, "it's a rough trade, heavy work, long hours. You end up with bad knees, a bad back, breathing all that smoke, traveling all the time, living in hotel rooms. It's not the kind of life for a..." He paused. "A what?" I asked. He hung his dark blue lab coat up on a hook. "It's not for you," he said, and headed for the door. "I'll take that under advise." I started to answer, but he was already gone. That was the first of many times when someone that I have never met before has told me that I didn't want to be a welder. I was always amazed that a stranger would have such a clear grasp of what I wanted. But of course, that's not what they meant. What they meant is that they didn't want me to be in the trade. And yet here I am, I would respond. What a curious thing. This is an excerpt from the beginning of the book called The Shipyard. In the middle of the industrial hustle of the Esquimalt waterfront, 2 enormous blue gantry cranes tower into an even bluer sky. They travel slowly back and forth on railway tracks, picking up heavy objects and moving them from one place to another along the side of the dry dock. Everything is huge, and the busy forklifts weaving in and out of the roadways seem tiny. 2 workers standing under one of these cranes, shouting into the industrial noise. To one side is a cluster of old single-story buildings that house various shop activities: the carpentry shop, the paint shop, the electrical shop, storage buildings, and sea cans full of tools. Next to the cranes is one of the welding shops with large steel tables outside, their tops made of slats of flat bar set up for cutting steel with the oxyacetylene outfits. On the other side of the crane is the dry dock, then the walkway, a few more buildings, and some stacked up ATCO trailers, and beyond that is the ocean, stretching to the horizon, dazzling in the afternoon sun. One of the cranes groans, kicks into gear, and begins traveling, a steel dinosaur with big blue legs. It is empty, its hooks pulled up to its belly, on its way to pick up a shipping container. Running parallel to the crane tracks, between the building and the sea, is a rectangular excavation in the side of the bay, surrounded by a steel railing. It's a hole in the ground lined with concrete as long as 2 football fields and as deep as a 3-story building. They call it the ditch. The Esquimalt Graving Dock is the largest hard-bottom dry dock on the west coast of the Americas. It is where the biggest ships, freighters, tankers, ferries, cruise ships, cable-laying ships, and barges are taken out of the water for refits and repairs. There is a giant movable wall at one end called the caisson. It opens to the ocean, and when it is open, the dry dock floods and fills up to sea level. As long as the caisson is open, the water level goes up and down with the tides. Ships are floated in through this opening and positioned over dozens of large blocks that are under the water. Then the caisson is closed, the water is pumped out, and the ships are landed on the blocks 15 meters below sea level. The caisson is as watertight